Hi everyone! Today I'm going to be discussing the character Magda Sorel from Minotti's The Consul, and my reason for choosing this character was because The Consul was actually one of the first operas I ever saw in person. I started opera back in the fall of 2018, and then they did The Consul here at the University of Mobile the spring of 2019. So it holds a special place in my heart and opened up a whole different world of music to me. And this is a character that has always struck me ever since in her story, and so I wanted to share a little bit more about her. It's also a role that I would love to play one day if the Lord allows. So it is very emotionally intense story, emotionally intense character, very vocally demanding. So I really think it's one of the most compelling roles in 20th century opera. So a little bit about the context of the opera. The Consul premiered in 1950 at the start of the Cold War, in a time where there was a lot of fear of government control. There was endless paperwork that was being done that affected a lot of people's lives. So the opera really reflects that atmosphere. It shows really the emotional pain caused by the strict systems of the time and the oppressive governments. And a little bit about Minotti. He was an Italian-American composer. He lived from 1911 to 2007, so almost an entire century. He was born in Italy, but he moved to the U.S. as a teenager and studied at the Curtis Institute of Music in Philadelphia. And this was actually where he became really good friends with Samuel Barber, which I thought was fascinating. He was both the composer and the librettist for The Consul, which I think really makes it dramatically really cohesive from music to text. And it's he originally wrote the role Magda Sorel for Patricia Neway. She was a singer who had operatic chops and also Broadway chops. So she really kind of blended the classical demands of the character, but also with the really raw theatrical realism of the character. So Minotti was actually inspired by a true story to write this opera. When he read a story about a woman who took her own life after being denied a visa. And he said, "The tragedy of our times is not that men are wicked, but that they are terribly dehumanized by social and political institutions." So he really emphasized that people aren't evil, but that the systems take away people's humanity. So this idea of losing their dignity in the face of cold bureaucracy was really the heart of The Consul and the story and the music. Minotti was really disturbed by a lot of the stories that he had read and decided to write The Consul as a political statement, but also as a psychological tragedy. Fascinating was The Consul was actually awarded the Pulitzer Prize for Music, which was a rare accomplishment for an opera, and it was the first opera to go on to have a successful run on Broadway. As for the story, the opera takes place in an unnamed European political state, which makes the story really kind of feel timeless and universal, that it's not in a specific place. Magda's husband, John Sorel, is a part of the resistance, and he has to flee the country. Magda she stays behind to get herself and her baby a visa, but every time she goes to the consulate, she's told to wait, fill out more papers, and then come back later. She struggles with the political system. Her baby gets sick, and her mother-in-law is threatened, and Magda slowly loses all of her hope. After her baby, unfortunately, passes away, help never comes to her, and she reaches her breaking point. In the very final scene, Magda returns to the consulate. She locks herself in there and ends her life. So just after that, the secretary finally calls her name, Sorel, but it's unfortunately too late. So Magda Sorel is in her probably late 20s, early 30s. She is a smart, strong, and deeply loyal person, but she's unfortunately trapped by the government control, by strict systems, by gender expectations, and the hope that trying harder will bring better results. At first, at the beginning of the opera, we see Magda is really active and she's hopeful, and unfortunately, due to her circumstances, she has constant rejection and becomes powerless, and that begins to wear her down. Her values, which are justice and family and survival, really begin to fall apart as the world offers her no support. And her journey is extremely heartbreaking. There's so many facets in her journey that are just so real and raw, and Menotti did such a fabulous job highlighting that. She goes from being really a strong fighter to somebody who's completely crushed by the government, by the system. And so I think she's a very strong character, considering all that she faced. She's not weak. She is just destroyed by being unheard and by being ignored. So Menotti doesn't criticize politics, but he's just showing the sacrifices and the costs that were paid just by people, and that they were basically erased from humanity and so broken down that they could not be recognized and they could be not reconciled by the government. So it's almost like they faded away into existence, which is so sad. As for the musical style, Menotti's music is very emotional. It's kind of modern for a little bit of its time, and it's really easy to connect with. His style is very Italian opera, verismo. There's some Broadway style melodies, specifically with some of the other characters, and it's very dramatic in its storytelling. So as for it being able to be operatic and kind of have a really great Broadway run, there was a really cool bridge between the two, which we've seen in a lot of the other American operas. And his music is really kind of fast-paced. It's very focused, very intentional, and very tied to the text. So the very famous aria titled "To This We've Come," also known as the Papers aria, it happens in Act 3, and this is her final breaking point. She confronts the consulate secretary and cries out, "To this we come, that men withhold the world from men." And I just think it's such a fabulous aria, very compelling and very realistic in its approach. And the character, it is designed really for a full lyric or spinto soprano. It needs to be somebody who has a smooth, expressive singing, but very powerful emotion, very powerful character development, and the vocal lines are very, very speech-like, but they build into really kind of like cinematic high points. As for the orchestra, it helps to tell a lot of the story too. There are moments where it's very cold and very quiet, like you're on the edge of your seat. But there's other times where it's really, really loud, bombastic, and intense, showing kind of that inner struggle that Magda is experiencing. And as for the rest of the powerful moments, there's characters in the ensemble. There's a lot of voice overlapping, interruptions that are made, which kind of shows the dehumanizing system that the characters are all trapped in. Magda Sorel, honestly, she is one of the most emotionally and vocally complex characters in 20th century opera. Her voice is really silenced. Her voice is, she is a voice for the silenced and a face for the forgotten. And it's just a reminder that that policies and that rules and laws are not just that. They really do affect people's lives. So I think that Menotti gave her music allowed her music to really speak and sing into that. And for those who are often left waiting behind those closed doors and never have answers. But this gives hope to those people and that their stories are being told. So there's a lot more to this very complex, beautiful character. And thank y'all so much for listening. Bye.